Coming up on today's episode of Airborne-Unlimited, part swapper sentenced in Florida, iconic fantasy of flight roadside airplane removal portrayed in documentary, commemorating 55th anniversary of Apollo 11 moon landing. Welcome to Airborne Unlimited. I'm your host, Holland Lee. Let's get into today's stories. Part swapper sentenced in Florida. Another criminal case involving non-airworthy part swapping has seen the sentencing of those involved, costing the perpetrators a year in prison and about $300,000 in restitution. Daniel Navarro, 50 years old, was the VP of Sofly Aviation Services, a parts distributor. Jorge Guerrero, age 71, was the firm's Procurement and Asset Management Specialist. Their grift wasn't anything particularly complex or thought out. Sofly would buy cheap parts marked as removed, and then fake the paperwork affirming that those same pieces were airworthy, refurbished, tested, or inspected when they sold them to the end user. In fact, they did nothing to ensure the parts were genuinely overhauled and fit for duty. The pair had begun to purchase as removed parts in 2012 and continued the grift until 2019. Most of the time, the Justice Department said, quote, Navarro and Guerrero would use an FAA-approved repair station's FAA certificate number to falsely certify the parts to have been overhauled, tested and inspected or repaired by that repair station, when in fact they never were, end quote. Similar activities have been pulled before, but the last one of note seems to sell parts to the light aircraft and business market. Unfortunately for the traveling public, Sofly sold to Canadian air carriers Air Georgian and Porter Airlines. They also fell afoul of L3 Harris, a U.S. DoD contractor. After the break, Aerox showcasing new products at AirVenture 2024.
Well, hello, fellow pilot. I'm John King.
And I'm Martha King.
You know, we've all had our flying lives disrupted lately.
Well, King Schools is here to help you stay up to date with courses that you can access on your desktop, iPad, or iPhone. If you'd like a refresher or just want to expand your aviation horizons, we have a course for you.
So head over to kingschools.com/rusty today for details.
Welcome back. Now let's take a trip around the patch for some shorter stories. Aerox showcasing new products at AirVenture 2024. Aerox will be at AirVenture 2024 with a display of its aviation oxygen equipment. The company will highlight two new products at Oshkosh. The Aerox Cylinder Sentinel is an accessory to all Aerox portable oxygen systems. It attaches to the cylinder with a T-fitting, so the manual pressure gauge can also be attached. And the Boomula, which is what it sounds like, a headset-mounted oxygen cannula in a rigid boom similar to the microphone boom. The universal attachment mounts to any headset and has a swivel for easy adjustment. Wisconsin National Guard promoting women in aviation. Career opportunities for women in military aviation will be a featured segment of Women Venture at this year's EAA AirVenture. And who better to lead the military's effort to promote women's role in flight and attract recruits than the subject matter experts themselves? Captain Meredith Porter is the battalion training officer for the 1st Battalion, 147th Aviation Regiment, a UH-60 Black Hawk unit in the Wisconsin ANG. She will be on a panel during the week to help share the stories of women in aviation, discuss her career, and showcase opportunities for women in the Army National Guard. Tourist helicopter crashes off Hawaiian island of Kauai. A tourist helicopter operated by Ali Kauai Air Tours and Charters went into the water about a quarter-mile off the Na Pali coast of the Hawaiian island of Kauai. One person died and 2 are missing in the crash that occurred about 13:20 local time on July 11th. It was reported to Kauai police by 2 hikers on the Kalalua Trail who saw the aircraft go down. Soon after the crash, lifeguards from the Kauai Ocean Safety Bureau recovered the body of 1 passenger. The pilot of the helicopter and the other passenger remain missing. Gulfstream completes Georgia expansion. Gulfstream Aerospace Corporation says it's finished its expansion of the newly enlarged Customer Support Service Center at Savannah, Georgia's Hilton Head International Airport. The new Savannah Service Center East is open for business, offering more than 200 new jobs with significantly expanded capacity for maintenance, repair, and overhaul. The opening was attended by a handful of state and local dignitaries, community partners, and Gulfstream family for a short ribbon-cutting ceremony to officially dedicate the new space. Well, that's it for today's Tripper on the Patch. Let's get back to the rest of the news. Iconic fantasy of flight roadside airplane removal portrayed in documentary. Kermit Weeks has amassed more than 140 vintage military and civilian aircraft during his life. He also established the Fantasy of Flight Museum in Polk City, Florida, along I-4, which traverses Polk County. To advertise the museum and attract visitors, Weeks mounted a Douglas DC-3 at the I-4 exit near the museum. Initially, Weeks had the airplane mounted in a nose-down position with the Fantasy of Flight name emblazoned on the wings. After some years and some number of concerned drivers calling police and news stations to report a plane crash, Weeks hung a mannequin from the plane and dressed it in seasonal attire to help reduce the number of accident calls. This year, Weeks decided it was time for a change. Weeks explained, quote, "It was getting old. We had some hurricane damage and the rudder blew off one time," end quote. In addition, the airframe was so corroded that restoring it was not possible, so Weeks had the venerable DC-3 removed to a ramp area at the museum. When Jonathan Andrus, a local video producer, heard of the project, he knew he wanted to make a documentary of it. He said, quote, "It was something that took me back to my childhood, and I know that the people of Lakeland had a vested interest in it," end quote. After these messages, commemorating 55th anniversary of Apollo 11 moon landing.
I think it's a very important thing to share the joy and love of flying. Our customers fly to remote places. They use our products to go places that are difficult to get to. Hertz has been an excellent partner for Whip Air, just in terms of your product support, as well as keeping an eye on the market and developing new products that meet demands. And it is that shared experience and the joy of flying that brings us all back and charges all of our batteries up.
For over 30 years, the massive Sport Plane Resource Guide has provided expert, credible information, evaluations, and critical analysis of all that the sport aviation world has to offer. The all-new digital Sport Plane Resource Guide is coming with extensive multimedia features that are constantly updated, an even more comprehensive online guide to all things sport aviation. Available soon. www.sportplane.com.
Welcome back. Commemorating 55th anniversary of Apollo 11 moon landing. The United States' space program culminated during the summer of 1969, when NASA's Apollo 11 mission thrilled every American and just about every other human on the planet as the spacecraft's Lunar Excursion Module touched down on the surface of the moon. Quote, "Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed," end quote. With those words, every person who was tuned into the radio or television, but especially the NASA folks in the Mission Operations Control Room at the Johnson Space Flight Center in Houston, Texas, and of course the families of the astronauts, let out the collective breath they had been holding since the LM began its descent to the surface. That brief transmission told us that Commander Neil A. Armstrong and LM pilot Edwin E. Buzz Aldrin Jr. landed safely on the moon as Command Module pilot Michael Collins continued to orbit above in Columbia. The excitement built up again about 6 hours later when Armstrong and Aldrin began their extravehicular activity, during which Armstrong became the first human in history to ever set foot on the surface of another planetary body. Quote, "I'm going to step off the LM now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." End quote. And that's our show for today. You can catch episodes of Airborne on YouTube, Roku, or Fire TV. Just search for Aero-News or Airborne, and don't forget to follow us on social media. Thanks for watching.